was the summer of 2014, and for my son's bar mitzvah present, just like many Jewish parents, we wanted him to bond with the Holy Land. Oh, it worked perhaps too well. My husband had stayed back at the hotel, and our friends, my son and I, had just stopped in a pharmacy.
Run to the bomb shelter, sweetie, please hurry. I didn't hear the sirens at first, but the Israelis did. They're used to hearing these things. We ran to the back of the storeroom. It was a 12-foot by 24-foot windowless bomb shelter. My heart's pounding. Boom! Boom! I hear and feel the percussion of the exploding bombs. I'm trying not to get sick. I look at my 13-year-old son and I think I'll never forgive myself if something happens to him.
That's an excerpt from a speech I gave to the Orange County Jewish Bar Association. It was the first, but not the last time we had to run to a bomb shelter. Our adventure and my transformation is also the subject of my book, Blasted from Complacency, A Journey from Terror to Transformation in Israel. There is no chapter in a parenting book on what to do when a war starts and you're on a family vacation. Think touring extraordinary and sacred sites mixed with cowering in bomb shelters. I'm still trying to get over the Jewish guilt of taking my son to war for his bar mitzvah present. The impact of being human targets helped me understand the plight of Israelis living like this, and it also made me want to work on peace. How Israel is often described on the news is not what I'd seen with my own eyes. And I felt Palestinian parents also preferred their children playing safely in their backyards. The missiles exploded just near enough to blow apart my world as I knew it, forever changing me. And you'd never recognize my life today with what it was like then. I believe I found my life's purpose. Hello, I'm Penny St., and I'm the host of Peace with Penny. Today we'll be speaking with Esther Hertzog, founder of SHIN, the Israeli Movement for Equal Representation of Women. SHIN was started in February 1989 and was founded with the aim of achieving equal representation of women in all power centers in Israel, whether political, public, or economic. The movement struggles for gender equality in all communities in Israel. SHIN initiates projects that raise feminist awareness by organizing numerous events that provide platforms for outstanding feminist activists and professionals in divergent sectors and fields. It empowers young women and encourages their leadership involvement, promotes cooperation and friendship among Jewish and Arab women, and facilitates vocational and political courses. Esther Hertzog is the founder of SHIN, the Israeli Movement for Equal Representation of Women. She is a social anthropologist teaching at Tzfat Academic College. Her main areas of research are bureaucracy and gender in the context of immigration, education, welfare, and the Holocaust. She is an author of 4 books, an editor of 8 books, and has published numerous academic and op-ed articles in dailies and magazines. Her feminist activities include founding and heading SHIN since 1989, founding Women's Parliament in 1998, co-founding Young Women's Parliament in 2010, and founding 2 women's Israeli political parties in 1992 and 1999. I'm looking forward to speaking with Esther about their work, so let's get started. Welcome, Esther.
Hi, Penny. Thank you so much. And I admire your initiative. It's really amazing, this project, amazing.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I absolutely feel it's truly an honor to get to speak to people like yourselves who are doing so much to help Israelis and Arabs and many others I work with, also help Palestinians and other Arab countries also to work with Israel. And there's so many people working on peace, but you never hear about it on the news. So that's what we try to do. So since you're the founder of SHIN, can you tell us why you started it?
Well, I started it when I realized that the parties do not bother about women's representation. It was in 1989, you know, so there was no awareness of the crucial need and how shall I say, basic justice, basic social need to involve women, to have women in the leadership. So I started this activity. And I was with a few other women and men, that all of us believe that we have to struggle to change things and to bring more women to power centers, all kind of power centers. So we started to do a lot of activities, but I think that the first years, maybe a year, 1 year or 2 years, we had meetings, home meetings all over the country. And we had, I think, about hundreds or thousands of people participating in these meetings. And gradually, little by little, I think that awareness did develop. And I think that more and more initiatives started, not only ours. So you could see other groups doing this or another kind of activity to change the situation.
Do all of your programs involve Jewish, Israeli, and Arab women working together?
Yes, it's very basic agenda that
Yes.
we want, that we insist that it will be together with Arab women, Jewish women and Arab women. And it can be women from all spheres of life, you know, professionals, working women, academicians, activists, you name it. And of course, we wanted to work together with Arab women. And we found out at the time when we started 1989, and then in the beginning of the 90s, that actually most of the initiatives of cooperation between Jewish and Arab women they were directed at more educated women, Arab women. So Jewish and Arab women from the elite, I would say, elite groups that cooperated. And we decided that we are going to work with women from all groups, educated, uneducated, older women, younger women, from all groups. So this was very, very important from our point of view. And that was exactly what happened when we started our activities with the young girls, with the young women's parliament. Again, we said that we want to have Jewish and Arab girls working together, meeting, socializing, knowing each other and respecting each other, and developing patience and respect for each other. And I think that we did quite well. I wish we had more resources, so we could have done a lot more. But I mean, we did our best with what we had. You know?
Well, it seems terrific, that's for sure. And obviously, in the U.S., there still is a disparity, but there's some particularly prescient issues in Israel that complicates the situation, such as the religious influence and the Orthodox influence. Can you talk a bit about what creates this disparity of women not being present in the power sources? Not obviously they're present, but not enough in where they can have the influence they deserve.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Israeli political sphere is based on sectorial representation. So we have representation of people from Russia, less so now, but it used to be. We have from religious national groups. We have the Orthodox groups represented in the parliament, and so on and so on. But as we have the Orthodox parties, two Orthodox parties, one is Ashkenazi and one is Sephardi, the Mizrahi, it's called Shas, you know. So they, in principle, do not allow women to participate in power positions. So they prevent the participation in power positions. And this is crucial. I mean, because if you think about, like, they are like 15%, I'm not sure about the exact percentage, but they are a big group in society, an important group in society. And if they prevent women from participating in political life, in the parliament, in the government, this it has a very deep impact on all women, first of all on Orthodox women, but on all society. So then you see not even one woman from the Orthodox parties that is in the parliament or in the government, of course. So this is a very bad situation. I think you don't find it anywhere else, maybe in Saudi Arabia, maybe, or very fanatic Islamic countries. But that's what happens here in Israel. So, yeah.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
But at the same time, I must say that there's a lot going on, as you said before, and you were very right about it, that there's a lot of activity that is going on in the field. A lot of activities of different groups, Jewish and Arab and Orthodox and religious and secular and so on, but you don't hear about it a lot. So for instance, I have this friend of mine, Iftisam Hamid, who is a very, very good friend and colleague and partner in all our activities. And she's doing a lot of work together with religious groups, so they do a lot of work with the religious groups here in Israel and in Jordan. And when it was possible, she was also working with religious groups in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip. So there's a lot going on.
She's an Arab woman?
Iftisam Hamid, she's an Muslim Arab woman who lives in a place called Faradis, and she's a very, very significant, very influential and impressive woman who is working for years for the peace movement and for religious tolerance and for a friendship between Israeli and Jewish women, and so on. So she does a lot. She did a lot of activities, and thanks to her, we actually joined her in her activity in many ways.
I have to have her on. So you'll have to hook me up. So as far as the Arab portion, there's about 20% in Israel. How are women impacted within their culture?
Well, I think that there's a lot going on. So you see that young Arab women, Muslim and Druze and Christian, all from all groups, they are doing very well in the educational sphere. So you can see that many young Arab women are getting higher education, academic education, and actually more women have higher education than men, Arab men. I see it in my college in Sfat where I'm working. I see that there are many young Arab girls, women that are studying for the BA or for in law studies and social work and other fields. So the change is very dramatic, I think. If you look back, I think 10 years ago, there has been a great change. So even in the Bedouin society, you can see that things have changed, and we have now young Bedouin girls from the women from the south who are in universities, colleges, and they get the higher degrees. They have the MA degree, and also the PhD. Some of them get. So things are changing dramatically, I would say. Now, another thing is, if you look at the school system, educational system, you can see that in the past, most of the teachers in the Arab sector, educational sector, most of the teachers were men. But this has changed dramatically. So you find it now, it's like in the Jewish sector, actually. So most of the teachers are now women. And even the principals, the the school principals are now many more and more women. So things are changing rapidly. Rapidly or not so rapidly, whatever, but things are changing, and it's for the better, I think. So
Absolutely.
nothing is
Yeah.
ideal, but things are changing, and I think that for the better. I really think so. So
You mentioned, and you know, from days gone by, I remember all the Save Soviet Jewry and immigration to Israel and all that. You mentioned a little bit the Russian-speaking communities. What impact, you know, what's the influence of women or not having influence in their community? In the Russian-speaking communities, do you run into any particular issues within that community?
well, that's a very interesting question, and I find it quite difficult to respond to answer, because, you know, I think that the fact that the immigrants from Russia were actually integrated very fast into general society, thanks to the approach, the immigration approach and the absorption approach, which allowed them to take the money and go wherever they want and do with the money whatever they find right, which did not happen with the Ethiopian. You know, my PhD was about the absorption of Ethiopian immigrants, and I thought that it was a very wrong approach. So they brought the Ethiopian immigrant, they put them in absorption center for a long time. And what happened is that the absorption was delayed for a long time. And I think they lost a lot in terms of working conditions, opportunities, and in terms of the education opportunity for the children, and so on and so on. So I think that even racism against the Ethiopians emerged from this kind of absorption, from this approach of absorption. So with the Russians, with the immigrants from Russia, it was different. They were absorbed straight away when they arrived. They went wherever they chose to live, and they worked in whatever they wanted or could, and they got, I don't know, the children went to the schools, to the right schools where they lived, and so on and so on. They got the jobs. They got they were more free. I think they integrated quite fast, actually. So I don't know. I meet a lot of course, a lot of past immigrants, the immigrants from Russia, but they are just like anyone. You can't, of course, you can't see them by color, but you see them, for instance, in the supermarkets, working in supermarkets as cashiers and all kinds of jobs, you know, in the university, everywhere. So
sorry,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no,
just what's in the news. Have you seen any new immigrants coming because of what's going on from Russia?
Well, yes.
Or Ukraine, or?
Yes, Ukraine, people from the Ukraine are coming in, yes. And the government, they had some problems because they were discussing, and they were trying to avoid the open gates, you know, for everyone. And they said all the Jews can come in, but not others, you know. So decided there was a lot of criticism, so they decided that some of the Ukrainians, not Jewish, can come for, you know, temporarily. Well, it's a very difficult and complicated situation.
Yeah, with the right of return and all that. Were the Ethiopians who came, were they Jewish?
If they were Jewish, the Ethiopians who came?
Yes.
That's another question, you know, that many said that many of them were not really Jewish, and some said that they were all Jewish, and they actually preserved the Judaism for hundreds of years, and so on and so on. But you know, the same things were said about the immigrants from Russia. They said that many of them came and they were not Jewish, you know, and they wanted to come to a better place with better economic chances and so on. So, well, from my point of view, it doesn't really matter.
Right, right, but it's a curiosity because, you know, for many obvious reasons, not least of which from Ethiopia, you know, I think most people don't think of them as you know, being Jewish, and I was curious about that community because I always heard that they had the segment of Jewish Ethiopians who, you know, immigrated to Israel. And so I was just curious about that, if they were.
No, I wouldn't say that they are generally considered as non-Jewish. I don't think so. I think that the general public does consider them, does relate to them as Jewish people. Yeah, I think so. There is a problem, of course, with the work migrants or political migrants that are coming to Israel from Africa, you know, so this makes the situation more complicated because these are Black people and these are Black people, so how can you differentiate, you know? But I think that generally people here do accept the Jewishness, and most of the people are treating them, relating to them in a fair way and respectful and so on. So there are some racism, there is racism, no doubt. And the police is treating the young Ethiopian guys sometimes very brutally, I would say, like you see it in America. But generally speaking, I wouldn't say that the public here thinks or relates to the Ethiopian immigrants, and they're not immigrants anymore. Most of them are not newcomers. They have been here for, let's say, in the Moses operation, the first wave, it was in the 80s, 83, 84. So we are talking about like 40 years already that they've been here. Yeah. So, and then in the 90s, the second wave was the Solomon operation. And again, it's like 30 years already. So I don't think that it's fair or it's correct to talk about them in terms of immigrants, you know? There isn't. No.
As far as the influence of being Muslim and women in their culture and getting heard within their political parties or otherwise, what's the impact of that? How are women treated in terms of power?
What do you mean? Which women? Who are
the Arab women, the Muslim women, the Arab women, the Muslim women?
How the Muslim women are being treated
in terms of power, of being able. You talked that they're becoming educated and they're becoming more. They're seen in more powerful positions, but still, does that translate into, for instance, the Arab political parties that are there?
Well, I suppose you must have heard that there is a very high rate of murders, you know, violence against women in the Arab society.
Yes.
A lot of against women.
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, not that we don't have it in the Jewish sector, unfortunately, but yes, I think that if you compare it, you could say that there are more women who are murdered in the Arab society than in the Jewish society, and this is not just a minor fact. It's quite cardinal. It's quite. But I think that the advancement and the integration of Arab women in all spheres of life is quite impressive, because you can see them. You can see them everywhere. The women,
yes,
in the in the media. So most of them are in the Arab media, you know, the Arab-speaking media, most of them. But still, there are some women who own radio stations, you know, family that own the radio stations, and they own it. And there are women who are now professors in the academia.
Right.
And there are a lot of Arab women who are doing very, very well. So things has changed dramatically, as I said. Has not enough, of course, but things have changed. And well, if you go to the pharmacies, you find a lot of too, and very educated and professional and so on. So, and I mean, if you look at the political sphere, you look at the Knesset, right? Now I think we have 4 Arab women in the Knesset. It's not enough. It's not equal to the men, of course. And for many years there was not even one woman in the Arab part. But for the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years, I'm not sure about when it started, that one woman entered the Knesset, although she entered through the Jewish party, not an Arab party. But then later on, another woman was added, and so now we have 4 women. So it's dramatic in terms of what we had like 10 years ago, but it's not enough, of course. But again, another but. You look at the Women's Committee, and it's headed for quite a few years. It's headed by an Arab woman, a Christian woman, actually. She is a Christian from Nazareth or Akko, I'm not sure. And her name, maybe you've heard about her, is Aida Tuma Sliman. And she is amazing, really amazing. You should really, I think she is doing a terrific job in the Knesset, and she brings up to the meetings, she brings up very, very difficult issues, and she wouldn't let anyone away with this, not the police representative, not anyone. So she's very committed, and she's very impressive, very impressive. So there's one, and others are also very, very serious women in the Knesset, and you know, I like it. I think it's nice. It means that yes, that women can become part of what's going on, whether they are Jewish, whether they are Arab, from the Christian sector or Muslim sector or whatever, you know.
So what got you personally interested in this? I always like to ask some personal questions, see what created the person that you are. Where did this interest in women's rights come from?
Well, this is a very tough question, you know. I'm not sure that I can answer this question. Well, maybe my mother has something to do with this. She started working in a shop. She was a sales lady in a women's dresses shop, and I saw her working outside the home and taking care of all of us at home. And well, she was in her own way, she was a feminist, you know. There was no name for that at that time, but the way she behaved and the way she made her decisions her way and so on. And then I had my father, you know, my father had also some very significant influence on me, because, you know, he actually treated me like his friend, you know.
How cool.
What's that?
I said, that's very cool. That's neat.
I used to go with him every Saturday to the soccer place, football, what do you call it, football or soccer games in Netanya, and I adore the football players in Netanya, which now can't understand. They're all men. They were all men, and now it's, you know, I can't stand it. You know, this situation. So anyway, I went with him. With him to men's films. He liked the Tarzan film and the war films, which nowadays I hate. But on time, I was going with him, and
Sure.
you know. So I think he had a very significant influence on my thinking. And then also you read books that make an impression and have a very deep impact on you, all kinds of books and so on and so on. I mean, just like anyone else.
How about your interest in uniting Arab and Israeli women?
Well, you know, I've been involved with activities with Arab women for ages, I think. And I think my first involvement started when I worked with a welfare ministry.
How old were you?
Well, I was, let me see, it was maybe 40 years ago. 40 years ago, something like that. I was at my 30s, I think, or something like that. I'm not sure. And I was working with a labor ministry, Ministry of Labor, and I was responsible for a project that was training women to become paraprofessional workers in the welfare field. So I had to, I started this association, whatever organization that trained women to become paraprofessional workers in the welfare system, and then I insisted that the project must have also Arab villages, not only Jewish towns. So I insisted that the project will include social workers and social paraprofessionals, Arab and Jewish. And you know, it wasn't self-evident. It wasn't just like that, because I was told in the ministry, I was told that, you know, there are so few social workers, then they can't have paraprofessionals, because social workers have to train the paraprofessionals, and if you don't have enough social workers, you can't have the paraprofessionals. So I said that it's double discrimination. So once you discriminate against the Arab population, when you have very few social workers, and then you discriminate against them for not having these paraprofessionals who can do a very good work in the field, helping young families, women, the elderly, and so on and so on. So I think I did well, and I succeeded. But at that time, I just met so many Arab women and men. And I developed some very good relationships with many of them. So it became very, very clear to me, very kind of natural for me to work with Arab and Jews just the same, you know, no difference. And then it continued. I was working at the college at Berlin, Kfar Saba. I don't know if you heard about it. That's in the center of Israel. I was working for ages, for more than 20 years. I was working there, and I led a course of leadership, women's leadership course. I think it was the first leadership course in Israel, and definitely it was the first course that was working together with Jewish and Arab women. So I started this, and then after we started this, we had many others who continued and maybe imitated this course, and out of this course, a similar course, came out the first Arab member in the parliament, woman.
Oh, how cool.
Yes.
We could first talk about the women's parliament.
Yeah, okay. So, what would you like me to tell you about it, about how it started?
Okay, you can start with how it started.
Well, so it started actually in Herzliya because SHIN was very involved in supporting women who were competing, who were participating in elections. So at that time, it was 98, in the local elections, we supported Yael German, who later on became the mayor in Herzliya. And then afterwards, she became minister, health minister. And we helped her together with another group in Herzliya that was called HEN, Herzliya Nashim, Herzliya Women. So we worked together, and our volunteers, our members, they helped Yael German in her campaign. So we were running around the streets, distributing cassettes of with the Yael German's talk about what she's going to do for women, and a lot of things that we did for to promote her chances to be elected. And in the beginning, people didn't know her, or almost didn't know her, like 1% support. So then another turn that took place. So in the second turn, she was elected, and she became the mayor of Herzliya. And she had like, I think 50% women members on her council, city council.
Terrific.
Yes. It was really a drama. It was really a dramatic event. So, but I have a lot of respect for Yael, because after she was elected, she recognized the value of our support, and she became involved in this women's parliament. So we started the women's parliament with Yael German in Herzliya, and actually in the first 2 years or something, we had, I think, maybe 2 events the same year in Herzliya, and we were supported by Yael German. And so when we started the women's parliament, we carried out like 6 events a year, every year 6 events.
Wow.
Yeah, and we were very insistent to have these events in both Jewish and Arab places. So we had them in various Arab villages, and of course in Jewish towns, cities, places. But first of all,
both women were together, both Arabs and Jews were together, but it happened to take place in either an Arab or a Jewish town.
What's that? I didn't get it.
Were both Arab and Jewish women were attending, but it happened to be taking place in either a Jewish or an Arab town. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah. We did our best to have at least 1 or 2 out of the 6 events in an Arab place. So we had it in Jisr Azarka, in Faradis, in Kalanswa, in Tira, in Pki'in, in the north, and in many Arab places. And that was one thing, to have the events in both Jewish and Arab places, but also we did our best to have always, in every event, to have on our panel at least 1 or 2 women, Arab women. So, and we always succeeded to find very outspoken, experienced, educated activists, and so on, So we developed some very, very wonderful relationships and contacts with Arab women, along the years. So, I mean, for how many years? We were very active until, I think, a year ago or year and a half ago, we carried out, like, as I said, 6 events a year. And you can imagine, if you have 6 events, and in every event we had between 100 people and 200 or 300, just like the event that we had in Jisr Azarka. Jisr Azarka is one of the poorest villages in Israel. And And when we had this event in Jisr Zarqa, we had actually 2 events there. But the first event that we carried out in Jisr Zarqa was about women against arms. So it was following the killing, the shooting that was going on in the village. And, you know, most of the council members in Jisr Zarqa joined the event. They were there. And there were stories that mothers told about events that took away their children, you know, in these shoot events and so on. But we were talking about any kind of using arms, you know, even the nuclear weapon and whatever. So it was a very, very powerful event. So that is just one example, but we went all over. We went to El Qasami College. That's an Arab college. Where we were there. We carried out a few events there, and I think the one in El Qasami in the college was about education, women education. I think it was, and then in we had so many, and you know, maybe you can you can suggest to the listeners to go to see our website.
Yeah, it sounds well, of course I've been all over your website, but yes, it's worth a trip for sure.
Yes.
So well, you having 6 events a year, sounds like an incredible amount. But you said about a year ago it stopped. Is that because of COVID?
We had already more than 100 events that took place all over the country.
How fantastic. But it stopped because of COVID. Is that why that?
Well, maybe COVID was also had something to do with the slowing down, I would say. But then we did carry out a few events online, you know, so we had a few events online. But somehow I think that maybe carrying out events online made us, how should I say, more reluctant to carry out physical events, you know what I mean? So we
I could take that a lot of ways. In certain ways, when you have an online event, obviously it's less expensive. But what's fantastic is the breadth of participation that, in theory at least, you can have in terms of all over the world. I mean, it's certainly, if you can get the exposure, then, you know, that opens up quite a lot of participation from everywhere.
Yes, you are very right. You know, it's interesting that you say that, because actually we carried out 2 international conferences in Tzfat, in the college where I'm working. We carried out conferences, one last year and one this year in March, on the International Women's Day. We had a second international conference, and it was about the sex industry, our struggle against the sex industry. And we had, I think, many people that joined us all over the world. I don't know, it sounds very big, but you know, but we had some very excellent speakers who are in the struggle in the United States, and so on, and of course some experts from Israel, from here. So the internet is a wonderful Zoom is wonderful to carry out big events, international events, and so on and so on. Yes, but I think that the power of the Women's Parliament was more from the physical events, that women met together and discussed together and have this kind of personal contacts. So it's very different. The
networking is better in person, you're saying?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. It's all very exciting, though. love to hear this fantastic work that all these women are doing, having kind of grown up in the corporate world of, being one of the first managers and consultants and all that, and,
Yeah,
getting older and so on, that, why are we still talking about this, But, it is what it is. And I'm glad that there are people like yourself continuing to face it and continuing to push the boundaries and not taking no for an answer. So yay, you.
People like you who care about these kind of activities, who are ready to invest a lot of efforts to bring it to the public and to public so on. So it's wonderful from your point of view.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely love it. Let's talk next about the Young Women's Parliament, because unfortunately we have screwed up a lot when it comes to things being able to change, and it's the younger ones who are going to have to move it forward. So let's talk about some of the things that you've done with the Young Women's Parliament, and can you talk about who they are and what you do?
Yeah, well, you're quite right. We also came to the understanding that we need to bring into the struggle, into this revolution, maybe young women, so that they will have the awareness and care about the women's situation or women's status, women's rights, and so on and so on. So, but actually we started this activity with the Young Women's Parliament in Bat Yam, because in Bat Yam there is a friend of mine, and she's also our partner in all these activities. And she carried out, actually, before we started the Young Women's Parliament, she carried out a very, very impressive activities with young girls in Bat Yam, various kinds of activities. And I don't know how she called this project. Well, never mind, I forgot it, but her name is Anat Livnat, and she's really amazing. She did a lot of wonderful work with young women in Bat Yam. And then we were working together in the Women's Parliament, and we were talking about the possibility of working with the young girls and continuing what she was doing in Bat Yam. So we started in Bat Yam, we started this project, and it was in 2010 that we started the first Young Women's Parliament, and the first event took place in Sderot. Have you heard of Sderot?
Yes. Yeah. It's about a mile from Gaza, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. So there was an event, what was it called? A kind of social event, bringing to this place all projects, all social projects from all over and so on. So we also joined that event in Sderot, and it our first event, I think, of the Young Women's Parliament, and we managed to bring about 150 girls from all over the country. And it was amazing. It was surprising. We were not ready for this kind of success. And we were discussing, I think at that time, we discussed the issue of women in the army, I think. And, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we had also young Arab girls. I'm not sure. But later on, we continued in different places, and we organized many events of socializing and discussing feminist issues with the girls. And then so we started groups, local groups. That was the basic kind of activity. So we had I think we had 10 or 12 groups, Jewish and Arab groups, all in various places, and they were active in their own town or village. And then once a month or once in two months, we had a gathering of all the groups, active groups, in one of the places. So So we had, what was his name? One event when we had, well, what is the name of the black man who led the struggle in the States?
Martin Luther King?
Yeah, Martin Luther King, his son, Martin Luther King Jr. came, yes, he was there in Bat Yam in one of these events, and he spoke to the girls, and we spoke about racism, and I don't know, I can't remember anymore about these issues, and we groups discuss group discussions and so on and so on. So this is just one example, but then we had another, well, many events. And again, if you can suggest to the listeners to go to our website of the Women's Parliament, they can find a lot of pictures and also the of summaries and descriptions of the events. So,
I'm looking at this picture here of them meeting with the female Knesset members. I'm wondering if you could say a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, right. So we decided, we thought that it will be very, very powerful to bring the young girls to the Knesset and meet with a Knesset member, female members of the Knesset, and listen to them and talk to them, ask them questions and so on and so on. And we carried out a few meetings like that. So actually once a year in one of the general, how do you say, one of the seminars, we carried out also once a year seminar. So every year we came to Jerusalem and we and what we did, among other things, was going to the Knesset to meet the members of the parliament, the female members, and talk with them and so on and so on. And then later on, we brought smaller groups to the Knesset to join the Women's Committee. So they joined the Women's Committee, and it was a very special adventure, experience for them. They were excited about it. Yeah, and
I would be too. Young or old or whatever. I mean, that's quite a privilege to be able to be with them.
A lot, it impressed them very, very deeply. So one of the projects that came out of it was that the girls in Bat Yam, the group in Bat Yam, they initiated, they came up with a law that they brought it up in the Knesset, the law that is about sexual harassment, because they found out that the law against sexual harassment did not include what's going the schools, the educational system. So
really?
Yes. Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah. So I don't know. So anyway, they were
good
working.
For them. Good for them.
They brought it to the Knesset, and it was also it was voted already for the pre-voting. How do you call it? The pre-voting process. You know, there are three stages of the process. That's the pre-stage, and then another 3 stages that the law proposal has to go through. So they managed to get it through the pre-stage.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, and you know, I remember that once we brought a few girls to the committee, to the Women's Committee, and the subject that was discussed at the time was, I think it was sexual harassment, and the girls got up and they were talking about it, and they said they brought up their own thinking, experience, knowledge, and so on and so on. So it was very, very powerful. But we did a lot of other things, other activities. So I know, for instance, when we brought them for the seminar once a year, then we did a lot to enable the socializing between the groups, and it worked very well, actually, very well.
What age group are you talking about when you say the Young Women's Parliament?
High school girls, like
high school.
they between 15 and 17.
How wonderful. That
Yes,
is really great.
now we had another very interesting activity with them, with the help of the American Embassy, the cultural center of the American Embassy in Jerusalem.
Mhm.
They facilitated a meeting, online meeting with girls from Dayton, Ohio, and
Mhm.
also from girls from Kenya. So it was a very exciting experience. So the girls could speak and ask questions each other. It was amazing, really. So
How
that's
wonderful.
another, yes, right.
So you have another project that you did have, Anwar, with Arab and Jewish women. If you could talk about that.
Right, yes, sure. So Anwar means in Arabic lights. And, you know, in one of our meetings, the Women's Parliament events, a few Arab women said, well, we want to have ongoing activities, mutual activities and cooperation, not just meet once in a month or in 2 months and so on. So that's how Anwar started. And the was to develop ongoing activities and cooperation. So we started Anwar, and in fact, it started in the second Intifada in 2001, I think.
Wow, really?
Yes, and the first, well, I can't remember where was the first. Yes, the way we our activities was in a form of weekend meetings. So we had 2 or 3 weekend events, weekend meetings, 3 times a year, something like 2 or 3 times a year in various places. And we were
fun. You may learn a lot, but I bet you have a really good time too.
No doubt, it was really great. It was really great. And I'll tell you something. I miss it. It was so wonderful. You know, sitting all in the circles, talking, and you know, talking also about some very tough issues. You know, it wasn't that always that nice. It was also sometimes very like, you know, we were talking about the Nakba in one of our events. Yes, in Kiin. It was in Kiin.
Well, for our listeners, the Israeli independence is one thing, but to the Arab population or Palestinian population, what we celebrate and love, the Israeli independence, they call the Nakba, which means the catastrophe. So that gives you an idea of the difference in perspective of the formation of Israel. So
exactly. Very so. So we talked about the Nakba, and we brought now what's his name? Bakri, Muhammad Bakri, who made a film. His name is called, the title of the film, his documentary is 1948. I think that's the name of the film. And we screened it, we showed it, and he was there. He came, he joined us, and, yes, and he talked about it. So it brought a split in the group, because
no doubt.
There
Peace work is difficult. It's so difficult because the most you have to do is to learn to listen and keep your mouth shut. Because, you know, if you come from one perspective and someone is talking about what you're thrilled about in such a, to them, it's horror, it's the worst thing that could happen. It's very hard to listen to and very essential. So it's very hard. But yeah, so what happened?
Yeah, a very sensitive topic, you know. So we were discussing, we were watching the film and then talked with him. And then it was like a storm, you know. A group from Herzliya, activists, very women, but they were more oriented to the right wing.
So
they were so very upset. So they left us. They left us afterwards. That was a pity, because we did want to have women from all sides of the political map.
Sure, they weren't ready. You have to be ready to.
Yes.
You definitely don't have to change your viewpoint, but you have to be willing to listen and try to work with where you can agree or where you can move forward. And you have to be ready for that, because it's hard.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. Yes. So, I mean, we had all kinds of problematic situations, many.
No doubt. No doubt.
Yes.
I mean, you really stepped in that one.
Yes, well, so, but we continued, and then we had other events, and they were all very exciting and very, how should I say, they were wonderful, all in all. And,
sure.
You know, once we had, with the Young Women's Parliament, we had an event in Kfar Saba, and it was at the time of the war. You know, I can't even remember which war it was.
Unfortunately, I'm sure that's true. It's been way too many. One is too many, but really.
Yeah. Of course. So anyway, there were missiles that were sent, and one fell on Kfar Saba, I think it was.
Holy moly!
Yes. So the girls, in the beginning, they panicked, but then continued, and nobody left. Not the hour.
That's Israel. That's Israel. I know from being there under those circumstances. I would, when you're in the bomb shelters and the missiles and you feel the percussion on your skin, even if it's up in the air and it's miles away, you still feel it and hear it, and the sirens, and because it happens unfortunately so often. Still, they'd say stay 10 minutes so that the shrapnel has chance to fall down to the ground, and some businessmen, hey, I got a meeting, and they would go, and of course, us new to this, or at least me, saying, where is he going? Is he crazy? But it becomes, I have things to do, and it's very unfortunate and a very strange way of life.
No doubt. Yeah, it's already like a routine.
Yeah. So let's talk about this last project that I want to be sure that we get to. Your Women Reborn. What different activities were those about?
Well, Women Reborn actually started in Faradis with Iftisam Mohammed, who I mentioned before, earlier, and she was an outstanding. She is still an outstanding leader, and she received a donation. Would it be donation or grant? Or
sponsorship of some type? It could be a grant. It could be it could be any of those. Basically, she got supported financially to do something.
Yeah, exactly. It was a family foundation, and one of the members of the family visited Israel a few times, and he met her, and he came to her home. At the time she lived in a very, very tiny home with her children and husband and so on. And he was very impressed with her, the way she was talking and the way she was telling about all her activities, peace activities with women in Gaza and women in Jordan, women in Israel, with all groups of women. you know, by the way, she went to Sderot when they were bombing, and she was talking to the people there, and she said, "We are brothers, we're sisters. We don't want anyone to die. It's unbearable that people are dying on both any side." You know, she's a very interesting person, and once she got this sponsorship, that was quite a lot of money. We started with her the project. She led the project, and we were supporting her in, well, thinking together, planning together, but she was the one who carried out the project in Faradis. And for 3 years, she was leading it, and she did so very well that the sponsor gave her another amount of money to do the work also in Jisr Zarqa. So we were working, she was working, and we were helping or cooperating in these two places, Faradis and Jisr Zarqa. And it was so very successful that first of all, it offered the women vocational training, all kinds of vocational training according what they wanted. They said what they need and what they want. It was languages, it was a training for sewing or for doing jewelry. I can't remember all the things that they did, but also raising awareness, feminist awareness, and political involvement. So they became so powerful in Faradis that when the elections came, the candidates came to them, to the women. They were now a very powerful group in Faradis, and the candidates came to them to ask them for their support. So they supported the man who was eventually elected and became a mayor.
Wow.
And that was a kind of cracking the system, Hamula system, because now the women supported men not according to what the Hamula decided, but according to what they thought will be good for them and for their families. So they were lucky enough, and Ibtisam was lucky enough that the mayor was very cooperative and very thankful, and he helped them in many ways, giving them letting them have facilities for their activities and money and many other things. And he made Ibtisam his counselor on women's issues and so on and so on. So it was very, very, very successful. Well, the only problem, you know, with all these projects, that you get the money and then the money goes away, and, you know, things go back to where they were, more or less. Not totally, but in many ways. So in Jisr happened something very, very similar. We also, well, Ibtisam led it also in Jisr, but we had local coordinator, and a lot of activities went on there. We found out that in Jisr Zarqa, many women were analphabetic or illiterate, and even in Arabic, they could not write or read Arabic. So we carried out these Arabic lessons and Hebrew lessons, English lessons, and computer lessons, and all kinds of activities that they wanted to have, according to wanted to have. And then also political awareness and feminist awareness and so on. So, well, when they got so very powerful, the candidate, the religious, very religious mayor, he didn't like it. So once he was elected, he was very suspicious of what was going on, if this is kind of harming the family system and the political system, whatever. So he didn't like them. He didn't like it, and he actually gave them a lot of problems. So this on Anwar, not Anwar, the Women Reborn, I think it went on 3 years in Faradis, and then 6 years in Faradis, and the last 3 years also in Jisr Zarqa. And I think that a lot of good things happened. Also continued with the Young Women's Parliament in Jisr. And it was a kind of continuation of the Women Reborn project. So
Great. For your last question, what areas in Israeli society are you seeing that concern you the most that SHIN can have a positive impact with, and how?
That SHIN has what? I didn't hear.
What areas in Israeli society are you seeing that concern you the most, that SHIN can have a positive impact with, and how?
Well, so many, so many things, so many things. Well, first of all, the most important thing is the power positions, that we want women to be involved in all power positions in society and in the country. And actually, starting now, we hope to start
Excuse me.
a project that we call 50-50. And this is a project that some friend of ours, I mean, a new colleague, a new partner joined us, and she talks in terms of 50-50, and to have 50% men and 50% women. So to have this equality all the way, and bring women to be half of any power position. So whether in politics or the labor market or culture, media, sports, and so on, you know, also. So a lot to be done, but the main thing, I think, that women will be equal part of every power center. This is a very central issue. And of course, doing it with Arab women together. They are our partners,
Sure.
in everything that we are doing.
Fabulous.
So, yeah. So I think this is the, how should I say, the heart of the struggle.
Yes.
But of course, other struggles that we are involved and we are interested in, like the sex industry that we are struggling against. And it is like family, how shall I say, family situation, family issues that are very bad for women and children, that we are involved, and we want to make an impact, because, you know, many young children are being taken away by the welfare authorities and so on and so on. This is another big issue that I won't bother you now about it, but we are also involved in this issue.
Maybe another time. How wonderful, though, that you do work on all these incredible issues, and you know, we are women, hear us roar, right? So thank you so much for your time today, Esther. What your organization is doing is so important for the health of Israeli society, for the world. Next week, we will have a privilege of speaking with Yuval Ben David of EcoPeace Middle East. EcoPeace Middle East is a unique organization that brings together Jordanian, Palestinian, and Israeli environmentalists. Their primary objective is the promotion of cooperative efforts to protect their shared environmental heritage. In so doing, they seek to advance both sustainable regional development and the creation of necessary conditions for lasting peace in their region. Amen. As you can see, many people are working very hard to improve the lives of Jewish, Arab, and Palestinian people in the Middle East, promoting cooperation. And Peace with Penny strives to get the word out that there is hope for peace in the region. Next week, we'd love for you to join us again. We hope that the situation will calm down in Israel and that there will be better news for the people of Ukraine and Russia. For now, we'll leave you as we pray that everyone will someday live in peace, shalom, and salam.